That's my green leadership activities right there, just going and having 3 showers a day.
Exactly. Perfect.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Joe's interviewing Robin Waite of Fearless Business. Robin was referred by Ed Rich on show number 127, and he kindly invited Joe onto his podcast too. Having spent 12 years running a digital marketing business, Robin pivoted in 2016 to focus on the part of his business he liked the best, training business owners how to be better in business. In 2016, Robin founded Fearless Business, a unique business growth accelerator for coaches, consultants and freelancers to help set them free from the sales cycle of doom. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Robin Waite of Fearless Business, and we've just been laughing about the fact that we've had 2 interviews, or we will have had 2 interviews by the end of this week, because I was interviewed by Robin on Monday. So we're feeling very connected this week, aren't we, Robin?
Absolutely, yes. I said it was my ESP kicking in. That's I think what's happened. So yeah, it's a real pleasure to speak to you earlier on in the week, and also to now be a guest on your podcast as well, Joe.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm feeling much more relaxed because this one doesn't have video. My listeners know.
I was going to say they don't know what I'm wearing though, so let's not make them feel awkward in the first 30 seconds of the interview.
Exactly. I don't know if I've ever done any of my podcast in like pajamas or something, but I do regularly work in my pajamas, so I probably have. It's whether, in fact, I did have a story, I don't know if I've ever recounted it on here, that I once answered the door at like 2:00 in the afternoon to our postman, who is really lovely. And I sort of opened the door and I went, I said, I'm not really wearing my pajamas. And he went, well, it could be worse. He said, you could be wearing your Christmas pajamas. And I looked down and I was wearing my Christmas pajamas. Christmas.
Because I work in a shared office actually. I had a similar sort of thing actually. It's slightly more embarrassing, but okay, because I don't like socks and shoes, right? So, but I work in a shared office, so occasionally I'll just slip off my socks and shoes. And I went downstairs to go and collect my post, and one of my neighbours just stopped me and started talking to me. And about a minute into the conversation, he looked down, and then obviously realised that I wasn't wearing socks and shoes, and kind of we tried to keep the conversation going, but we both knew that in that moment it was slightly awkward, and that he'd lost his opportunity to ask me what was going on. So yeah. So I feel your postman's pain,
exactly.
in terms of
Well, I just love that he actually made the point. He could have pretended and just carried. Oops, I just bumped into my desk after saying I won't do that. He could have just carried on and pretended he hadn't noticed, but he just sort of topped my comment. I felt he is very funny.
It's the Christmas thing. Probably it's quite painful for postmen.
Yes, well, exactly. He's like, he's probably hinting about the fact that I never leave him a Christmas bonus or whatever they call it. I think that's what sort of older people do. It's like I don't tip my hairdresser because I just don't feel comfortable. That's not what people of my age do. But if you're like older and you've got a nice perm and things, I don't know. No, what do they have? What do the old people have? This is a really random start.
The blue rinse
podcast, isn't it? Blue rinse, or the set. They have like a weekly set. Then they get like a little tip, don't they? But I've never done that either. So so my postman probably doesn't really like me.
Well, I did a paper round for 4 years, and I was the most tipped paper boy in the whole of our little village. And it was just I used to stop and chat to people. We used to get around the route fairly quick and I had the biggest route, but I used to make sort of £100 worth of tips in December, and that all that money then paid for all of my family's Christmas presents.
Oh, wow, you're making me feel bad now. I'm gonna have to leave the postman a tip this year. Anyway,
I would, Joe. Give him a big tip. Give him a really big tip.
And say lots of love, Robin.
Yes.
Oh dear. Right, so tell us, Robin, what you do and where you do it.
So I'm
Well,
obviously no longer a paper boy. So yeah, so so no, I mean basically I've run businesses pretty much all my life. So I'm 37 now. I've been in business now for 19 years in various sort of one shape and form. But ran a marketing agency for 12 years up until 2016, and then made a transition when family arrived. So our second child was about to be born. I kind of decided I wanted a bit of a change of scenery and to have a business which worked more around me than vice versa. So set up the coaching practice in 2016, and really it was a culmination of taking everything I'd learned in the marketing agency, not from a marketing perspective, but actually seeing all of the struggles that businesses used to go through as they were growing, and understanding the economics of how businesses work, and when you attract clients in, how to maximize those opportunities. So that's now what we teach our clients. We work specifically with service client businesses, so coaches and consultants, but also occasionally sort of freelancers, marketing or marketeers, and various people like that. And I have stepped into the corporate world during that process of kind of working out who it was I really wanted to work with. But I felt that the gift which I've got in terms of from a coaching perspective is we kind of create the greatest impact with very small micro businesses, one-man bands, where they're doing everything right, but they're just not really maximizing those opportunities. And we have clients not just here in the UK, but we have clients kind of dotted around the world. I've got a client in Shanghai, a client in Switzerland, got a client in America, nearly got one in Canada. So that would have been 5 countries, which would have been pretty cool. But so it's we do a lot of our work in an online environment now on a group basis as opposed to one-to-one as well. So it's great fun. Absolutely love it, and we get fab results.
Lovely. And you said you worked in a co-working space. Do you do that all the time? Do you work from home as well? Do you do other things, coffee shops, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, all of the above, really. I mean, it's not a co-working space. It's actually an office, a shared office. So with about 8 other different businesses kind of dotted around in the centre of town. And then I've got an office at home, which I actually built myself. So it's one of these lovely cedar-clad sort of bifold door type offices, which I built last summer. So at some point, I'm kind of making that transition now potentially into sort of moving into my home office, which normally it's the other way around. But and then in terms of like occasionally, I have got I've got a couple of sort of old one-to-one clients, and I actually prefer to kind of meet them in, like, I call it's neutral territory. So we'll meet at a really nice sort of hotel reception area or meeting rooms, because I find it's really helpful to kind of get our clients like out of their own office environment sometimes, and into another place where the coffee, generally speaking, is actually better than the coffee I make, which is normally quite a big bonus for our clients.
Excellent. You're going to have to come up with a name for your home office. I interviewed Graham Alcott on the show a few weeks ago, and he calls his the shed, and apparently it is one of those ones where it isn't really a shed, it's a very nice garden office. But he came up with the word to sound, quite cool, like it's nothing, So what are you going to call yours?
It's going to have to be the Fearless Business HQ.
So it sounds like a massive concrete conglomerate type office.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, where loads of people hang out. Whereas actually, it's in reality, it's just kind of me and Zoom, and that's spiders. It. Yeah.
Brilliant. So you said you've been in business for 19 years and you've done various things. You've talked about changing your business when your children came along. But I'm sure there's a bigger drive there, because you've talked off air about sort of future plans as well. So talk us through a bit of why you do what you do.
The main thing for us, like our core value is all about impact. We have clients now who, so that there's some, you can kind of sense, why I switched from because we had some impact in the marketing business, but ultimately what we were doing was building websites and, doing branding like logos and things like that. And in effect, we were kind of building somebody else's dream, but nobody ever really kind of gave us credit for that. It was kind of like it was just a website or it was just a logo, and so and we did other kind of things from a marketing perspective for our clients in terms of kind of growing their businesses. But one of the greatest differences now is, between that and the coaching side of things is because we influence other areas of the business, which especially when it comes to sort of cash flow and things like that. You've got clients who've been able to we've got Rich and Amy who run a small web design business. They when we first started working together, they were only making about £800 a month, and living in rented accommodation. They had 2 young kids as well. And actually, since we've been working with them, they're one of my longest standing clients, going on 3 years. They've actually been able to save up a deposit for the house and move out. They've got married, which I think is pretty cool. Richard's now got his own office, which him and Amy share. They're based sort of down in the southwest. And also income wise, this is where I feel like, the real impact happens, and it's tangible, which, the marketing agency, it wasn't so tangible. With this, it's really tangible, because we got them to a place whereby they were, back in May, we crossed the threshold, which was to create £3,000 a month worth of recurring revenue. So 4 times their income from 2.5 years ago, but just in support contracts and sort of hosting and things like that. But also they generated 3.5k in project fees. So they did sort of 6.5k a month. And the beautiful thing was they wanted more of a lifestyle business. So like me with my beautiful 5 and 3-year-old daughters, we've got those wonderful 6 weeks of summer holidays, and they just wanted to be able to kind of almost switch off the business over the summer and just go down to bare essentials. And the 3k a month basically means that they don't have to take on any new clients, but they still get £3,000 coming in with the support contracts, and they get to work with clients they're already familiar with. And it's those sort of they're micro sort of impacts, if you look at the business thing as a whole. But for Rich and Amy, these are like massive life-changing sort of opportunities we're helping people to create.
It's interesting. You said wonderful 6 weeks in the summer. And I do wonder sometimes if it's one of the benefits of being an individual business owner is that you do actually call it that. Because there's loads of sort of not PR, I don't know, talk in the summer about, oh God, children at home, oh God, it's, really it's loads of effort. And I do wonder sometimes whether it's because you're having to juggle that along with everything else, whereas people like, sorry, I've forgotten the names, Amy and Rob. Richard, and you and me are creating and designing a business where you can see that time as great time, because you've made it so that you have less of a challenge than perhaps when you don't have the choice because you're working for someone else and you have to fit everything in. I don't know, it's obviously driven some of their thinking and yours and mine. Do you think that's the case, or?
Absolutely. I think when you're working for yourself, you get the opportunity to design your business how you want to, and if that means kind of making it fit around your family, because it's frenetic having young children. It's doing, not even during the holidays, but during term time when you're kind of doing drop-offs and things like that. My wife works very hard as well. She's a lawyer, so kind of works more standard hours, and we just worked out that it would be virtually impossible for, if I had a job, right, if I was working for somebody else and I was having to set off at 7 a.m. and not coming back till 7 o'clock at night and things like that, it would make it virtually impossible for us to all really, like, for me, Charlotte, and the 2 girls, to kind of really have a proper family life. Yeah. Whereas at least, with, I can fit my core coaching hours around doing school drop-offs in the morning. Like, don't get me wrong, it's really stressful. Like I'm, business for me is like, it's my passion. I find it easy. It's, I could do it with my hands tied behind my back, my eyes closed, in my sleep. But children brings a whole different challenge. But fundamentally, like, I've been able to set up my core coaching hours so that I can actually, make sure that life isn't stressful for the girls, and make sure that Charlotte's kind of reassured that doesn't feel so guilty when she's out of work, because I'm here to kind of, help support the family as well.
I was going to say, and it gets easier as they get older and you have to do less of the dropping off because they can, take themselves and everything else. But I was just reflecting, it doesn't actually, you just have different challenges. So Ellie's like netball mad, and she plays netball 5 or 6 times a week. And, we were Maidstone, half an hour away last night. She goes to Raynham, 50 minutes away, maybe an hour away on weekends. She does, this, that and the other. And so it doesn't get any better, actually, just in case you were wondering. You just go
that's reassuring, Joe. It's fine. I'd give up now.
I was going to say, come on my podcast and feel really good afterwards.
But I mean, imagine what it'd be like for most of, because a lot of you work with similar sorts of clients. So a lot of the coaching consultants, the clients that we sort of work with, they're super, super bright people. And like most importantly, like they care a huge amount about, their families and their clients. And it's really, really important to them to be able to get that balance right. If we were to take that super, super brightness, that intelligence, and kind of be in a job, I think there'd be far more miserable people out there than there are currently.
Yes, yeah, true. So when you changed to the new business as a result of the children coming along, that was obviously one way of sort of working out how you sort of balance those two things, or I don't like the word balance, but made your life and your work stuff all sort of fit together in a different way. What were the sort of tangible differences? You talked about your coaching window being different. I guess you've made yourself available when you're available and not when you're not, whereas in a sort of service business where you're providing things for people, I guess it's harder to do that. What other things have you done to enable you to fit everything together and integrate your work and your personal life together?
It's probably worthwhile just kind of taking a bit of a step back, because it might be helpful for your listeners to kind of understand like what happened during that transition period, because it wasn't so much about making my business kind of fit really around the children. That was probably kind of leading kind of slightly misleading. But during that transition process, actually, when my family was expanding, it made me realize what I'd designed in my old business, what wasn't serving me properly. And I had a team of 4 people working within the business. We were doing about 250k turnover. It was a good little business, and lots of complicated projects coming through and things like that. And I was starting to get more speaking engagements and consultancy type work. And actually, there were lots of, we had a good number of clients as well within that business. So literally, we actually spent a lot of time firefighting, and it was at that point when I realised that. Those were just massive distractions from being able to just put a little bit more energy and effort into the family. And for me, it was about, I always had a dream to kind of build not that it's just about me, but to build an empire as big as I could on my own. So, and then, so it's literally, I just, kind of went out on a cycle ride with my buddies, and one Sunday morning about 3 weeks before, so I knew when Sophie was going to arrive, because we had 2 planned cesareans. So about 3 weeks before our due date, I had a bit of a breakdown and just went back home to my wife and I said, look, this business just isn't working for me. Like it feels too stressful. There's just too many pressures on me. And actually, the one thing I really want is just to take 3 months off. Call it paternity leave, whatever you like, and actually redesign a business that is going to work for us a bit better. And so I did that. And in terms of kind of the tangible benefits, it's just nice to be around the girls, or available for the girls. I mean, for me, like I said, my main driver is I love my work. I find it very hard to kind of switch off from work and not work. I enjoy the process of like writing books, and I enjoy the process of kind of putting content out and all of that sort of thing. But the beautiful thing about it is, because I got the office home, got the office here, I can spend the time with the family and also then just work late into the evening if I want to. Whereas again, that was starting to become painful with the old marketing business, just because of the pressures on staff and customers and things like that. So it was just a very different business. And I think had I not made that transition, I wouldn't have realized what it was that I was so unhappy about with the marketing agency.
It's interesting how much people's businesses change. I regularly talk to people on the podcast who have gone through various iterations of their business, and I'm similar. But so often it's about sort of external interest or pressures, or people end up providing a service because that's what their customers want, which is not a bad thing to do necessarily, but it doesn't always create that intentional shape of business that works and fulfills what you want for your business and your life. So I guess you had a sort of a natural sort of happening that prompted that thought process. But I wonder how often people really do stop and think, oh, actually I don't enjoy this, or oh, I've ended up doing this because that's what people have asked me to do and I've said yes, but it's not really what I want to be doing.
I think most people don't realize it until things stop working. So what it looks like is we kind of just go into our, every day we wake up, we have a shower, we show up, sit down at our desk, and we send out those social media posts and clear down our inbox, and we go to a networking meeting. We do all this stuff out of habit and on repeat. And it gets us kind of, so far the results are okay, we survive. And it's not until things start to go wrong that actually, when we don't get all the clients that we used to get, when maybe the same amount of money, stops coming into our bank account that used to come into our bank account for the same effort, and things like that. So we start to get all these kind of clues and warning signs, and it's just about having a self-awareness to pay attention to those. But those are what we call lag indicators. So when people's businesses start to falter, i.e. sales drop and there's not as much cash in the bank, everything up until that point has already lagged. It's a bit like, a more tangible example I can give is, imagine if you had a goal, right, and it was to get 2 new clients a month, for example, into your business, and you get to the end of the month and you've only got 1. It's a lag, because everything is lagged up to that point, and there's nothing you can do now to influence. You can't lose that client, you can't win another client, so you can't achieve your goal. And people are just fundamentally measuring the wrong things. They're not measuring the activity which leads to that goal, that sale. So what I mean by that is, if, for example, in order to get those 2 sales, you need to have 10 consultations a month with prospects, and you get halfway through the month, maybe you've only sat like 1, 2, or 3, you know that your lead indicators, i.e. those meetings, are already starting to lag behind where you need to get to achieve those 2 sales. And but you can measure it in a number of different ways. So it's not just the tangible like lead indicators, like how many conversations you started, but also like, are you putting out the same volume of content? Are you as excited about like putting out content as you were when you first set up your business? What's the general feeling about your business? And sometimes just checking in every day with like, how energized am I, is enough to tell you whether you're starting to kind of fall behind on where you need to be. And it's that level of self-awareness which a lot of small business owners miss, because they're like tiny little things, they're tiny little pieces of feedback, but it's much safer, it's much more comfortable just to sit at our desk and go through all of those repetitive tasks that we do without really checking in.
I think self-awareness is a massive thing. I was only thinking last week that I'd come back from the summer thinking, I'll do this, I'll do that, whatever, and then I suddenly realized that everything was frenetic. There was stuff happening left, right and center, and sort of I then pulled back and thought, hang on a minute, why is this happening? Oh, I've booked a load of things in my diary. But you don't like doing lots of things, you like staying at home and doing your work. Yes, well, why are you not doing that then? Oh, because I booked a lot of things in my diary. And I sort of unraveled a few things to the point where my week's been a lot clearer this week, and I've got so much more done, and I'm feeling much more about, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think self-awareness is key, but it's regular self-awareness, isn't it? It's about having sort of reviews, knowing that you need to look for those little indicators that you talked about, and being quite clear about where you want to go with that. And I know goal setting is something that you talk about. How do you do that? Because some people, I'm not very much about structured goals. I don't say that, a week on Tuesday I'll have done this. I'm much more about a bigger vision, and then sort of corralling what I do towards that vision, if you like. But obviously, there's loads of different ways of goal setting and monitoring that. What's the sort of way that you do that?
Well, you've kind of alluded to like the difference between strategy and tactics there. Like tactics are like next week. If there's something that you got to do for next week, that's normally quite a tactical thing. Mm-hmm. But if you've got something, a longer term vision for your business, big, hairy, audacious goals, those tend to fall into the more strategic kind of thinking, like the 30,000 foot overview of your business. So if for example, that if you kind of, without going into too much detail about the maths, but if you know that, for example, you have one single overarching goal, which is to deliver develop a 6-figure business, and in order to achieve that, you need to have 10 clients paying you £1,000 a month. Like that's just a very simple goal which you can then sort of measure everything against. But the next thing though, and I kind of alluded to this earlier on actually, is about then like, okay, well, what activities do we need to do in order to achieve that goal? And this is a bit where people sort of falter, because we we put 100k business down in our business plan or in our in our journal, and we start to do those kind of positive affirmations and some of that woo woo stuff, but what we don't do is we don't reverse engineer it and work out how we're actually going to achieve that. And part of the reason for that is mostly down to fear. Like sometimes like we set big goals for ourselves and we don't actually believe that we can achieve them, and that creates fear. And so then fear, obviously, fight, flight, or freeze kicks in, and most of us just procrastinate and think, oh well, maybe 100k business isn't for me, or maybe if I choose to build a 100k business, it's January now, and I can kind of put this off until June or July if I want to, have a break in August, and September comes around, I'm nowhere near my goal, so I'll just give up on it. And I think the key to it is about like those lead indicators, those activities you're doing that are going to lead you towards your goal. So challenge is, though, a lot of the stuff is very hard to kind of identify. So we've got there's so much noise out there with social media and everything on the internet and videos and Netflix and kids, and there's just so much noise out there. It's actually very hard to work out which activities are going to get us closer to our goal. So again, this is about self-awareness and trusting your gut instinct. So it's kind of like sending an email proposal out to or an email out to somebody. Is that going to get me close to my goal or not? Well, it might do. So okay, we'll do that. But the challenge is there's so many distractions. So I remember when I started out my coaching practice, I was like, right, I need 10 clients, 250 quid each. That pays the mortgage. Everything's hunky dory. And a couple of things cropped up at that point. So I'd worked with Russ, who appeared in my book, Take Your Shot. And somebody said, you should write a story about that because that's really compelling. It's like a really, so I could have written that book then. I got invited to I wanted to start up a podcast. And in fact, I started the process. I was going to do it jointly with somebody, but transpired that I was going to be doing all of the finding of the guests, the editing, like literally doing the whole thing. And in the end, I said no. But we end up with these activities that can also just distract us and take away from the basic stuff, like how we go out and get clients. So at that time for me, it was like just going to networking meetings, speaking to as many people as I can, and actually getting speaking opportunities. And I think in the first 12 months of my coaching practice, that was all I focused on solidly, was going out to networking meetings and speaking at networking meetings. I did something like 60 talks that year. I did 125 consultations because I was just like, right, I've just got to move people through a process. I've just got to, in order to get clients, I've got to get in front of them and deliver some value. And this is how I'm going to do it. So I was very clear on what those activities were, but a lot of people would just allow, who knows, the podcast might have got me those clients, but it wasn't definitive. And as you kind of start to build up those 4 or 5 activities which get you closer towards your goal, you'll start to build up some clarity. But it's those activities and that clarity space which actually take the most effort, and that's where most people stop. So you imagine the effort it took to deliver 60 speaking. I mean, it's only one a week. It's not many, but 60 speaking gigs. Imagine the effort it took to do 125 consultations where a majority of those people are saying no. So actually, when you've got the clarity, and there's a ton of work there which has got to be done, but it's going to pay off. You've actually got to have quite a lot of determination to kind of get through that. So that's kind of the third thing, if you like. So we've got the goal, the activity, and the determination, the tenacity to achieve that goal.
Yeah, and as you say, it's such a simple process, but it's also, there's so much opportunity for it not to happen, where people are not clear about where they want to go, working on the wrong things, and just giving up because it doesn't seem like it's getting them anywhere, or giving up too soon, or just procrastinating, as you said, quite often through that fear piece.
Well, goals are. Yeah. I was going to say goals are like the most important thing in business. You should not underestimate goal. Imagine if you had to drive 1,000 miles, right? And we've got all this amazing technology in cars these days. Imagine if you jumped into your car to do a 1,000-mile journey and you didn't bother punching the postcode into a sat nav, right? You're going to end up getting lost. And a goal is exactly like that postcode in the sat nav, because you punch the postcode in, sat nav then works out the optimal route in order to get there. So you have to have that goal in place. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to create that route, that pathway in order to get there. And, and it's that typical thing of like being 3 feet from gold, If we haven't identified the goal, then we're not going to get anywhere close to even 3 feet from gold. We're just going to end up getting lost somewhere along the way.
So on a day-to-day basis, how do you operate your sat nav? I love that.
So I've sort of 2 or 3 different activities which I have. So I operate something called a default diary. So I have specific activities booked in with regularity, same day of the same week. So when my coaching sessions happen, when I book sales calls or consultations, I make sure that I don't overbook myself in terms of speaking gigs. Making sure that I have regular slots for people to book podcast interviews and things like that. So, and the key to it is knowing about that, having a basic understanding of like how to best optimally use your time. Because again, if all I'm doing is recording podcast interviews, I'm not taking the time to do consultations and help clients and actually enroll people. So that's the first thing. So I operate a default diary, which has those activities that I talked about kind of mapped into it. The second thing I do is something, because there are also other kind of opportunities which crop up. So I operate something called a diary detox, which is a guy called Paul Holbrook came up with this system. And it's basically a process of color coding the activity. So he says that he used like green for leadership activities, like so communicating and learning and stuff like that. Those would be green activities. And then he talks about orange activities, or amber activities, which are like monitoring. So if you have a team, it's making sure you're spending time monitoring the team, making sure they're okay. And then red activities, which is like the doing, almost like the fee earning work, basically the doing activities. And you should have a nice balance of green, amber and red activities in it. He also talks about the brown activities, the floating. You can obviously guess what that refers to. So we try and avoid those as best we can, but actually sometimes it's okay just to have just to go and spend some time, with a bit of an empty diary of floating time, because that refuels as a good time for the soul normally. So I've got my default diary, I have my diary detox, so I make sure I color code my activities. And then the key thing is actually remembering just to check in and check both of those, which I do on a daily basis. So I actually use a little app called Todoist. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but basically you can just put, oh, do you? Yeah. So you can put in, all it's got is just one line. It's like a to-do app, basically. So I pop in one line, which says every day, check your default diary, do a diary detox, so 2 separate entries. Another thing which I do, which is like a morning formula that came from, I was listening to a podcast by the guys at Traffic and Funnels, and they talk about having this thing called a morning formula, which is a bit like, it's just a document which kind of talks through like how you want to behave, like reminds you of your mission and your values and things like that. So just to check in with that every day as well. And then I get Todoist is great because I don't know why, but at 4:59 a.m. every morning, it then emails me a digest of the stuff I've got to do for the day, which obviously includes those 3 activities plus anything else I kind of mapped out. So I'm useless without a list. If I don't have a list, I'm just a waste of space basically. So Todoist is my list, and it's an amazing app if you don't know about it, and quite cheap as well.
Yes, yeah. I laugh about how sophisticated I've got mine set up. But it is a very simple app as well. It's very much, I've said before on the show, it's the thing that I have used to manage my task list for the longest, because normally every so often I get distracted and go off and find a new way of doing it and spend ages organising myself. But actually I can stay with the same app and just reorganise myself on that now.
Well, that's it. I mean, the thing is, I encourage people actually to do, or my clients especially, to do something called like a digital detox, basically, where you go back through and check in on those systems that you set up and make sure they're still serving you. But I've evolved that there's like several stages of depth now to that. So as a part of it, it's making sure that you remove yourself from any Facebook groups you signed up to, you're getting notifications from that. You no longer kind of are active in, making sure that you unsubscribe from any emails you signed up to. If you've got any paid subscriptions you're paying for but not utilizing, unsubscribe from those as well. So the digital detox should cover, and I do it on a quarterly basis, but it ends up, it's like just declutter your life, just get rid of all the crap. And then all of a sudden, you've got all, a bit of extra time and space, which you can then probably fill it back up with more stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. So who would do that?
or you could just do what I do, which is they've just opened up a wave garden down in Bristol, near where I live, and I've been waiting for an inland surf space to go to for a long time, because I'm kind of quite into my surfing. So I'm actually one of my things is free up my Friday mornings now, so that I can go down and go surfing every Friday, which would be pretty cool.
That's really cool, and I love the wave garden. I've never heard of that. That sounds really cool.
They're really new. They've got one up in North Wales at the moment, and there's one in Spain. But they were kind of They were the first two, and they were just testing them. So this is the first commercial wave garden in the world, which is really exciting, and it's in our back garden pretty much. So yeah, and I've got my first lesson, I think, booked now on November the 19th, which I want it to be now. I want it to be November the 19th right now, because super excited. So figured I'd get a couple of lessons in, and then I'd upgrade myself into, like, just being able to show up and surf every Friday.
So it's like a, I don't know, dry ski slope apart from it's surfing. So they create waves for you, do they, sort of thing?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So I think there's something like, how many waves an hour? Is it 80 waves an hour or something like that? It's more, maybe more than that. It's amazing, and it's well, it might not be. I might be terrible at it. I don't know. When we get there, we'll have to wait and see how good it is. And I'm sure, like, getting into water in the middle of the winter, probably, even with wetsuits, is a bit scary. But
well, it's okay up until Christmas, probably. It goes really horribly wrong after that. My husband sails, and they always say that the sea is really, I was going to say really cold and then warm, and I don't think it ever gets warm, but it's the warmest it ever is, like now, because it takes all summer to warm it up.
Yeah, no, that's actually right. I'll surf in UK waters up until sort of late November, because you got the Gulf Stream, and it is lovely and warm. And I mean, I've surfed in a lot of different places, actually, and so I've surfed in Portugal and Morocco, France, so all down the Atlantic coast, and the British waters. We've gone totally off topic here, Joe. I hope this is okay, but the British waters are still the best. Like going and surfing in the Gower and then down in North Devon, you actually can't beat it, because it's not crazy like some of the Atlantic coast, like further down through Europe and Africa. It's kind of the waves can be fairly sensible and safe. So anyway, we've gone off on a tangent, Joe.
One of my questions was going to be how you look after yourself and what you do to relax. So you've started to say that. So clearly surfing is one of the things. How do you keep yourself fit for that, though?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit lazy when it comes to the surf fitness, because you can get away with kind of just bobbing around in the water and catch the odd wave that's quick enough without masses of effort. Where you've got to be surf fit is where you start to go out into bigger waves. So when it starts to get sort of 6, 7, 8 feet and above, you've got to be fairly fit in order to be able to paddle out. So I kind of, at the moment, whilst I'm not surf fit, then I'll kind of pick the smaller waves, the safer stuff. But actually, aside from that, my sort of workout stuff is I do a lot of cycling. So I cycle with a local club every Sunday. That's like my non-negotiable. I have to go out for those guys for do 50, 60 miles. In fact, I've just done 100 miles in support of a mental health charity. So I did that on Saturday. And it's just so invigorating, and it's just like this, you can't beat the feeling of doing a challenge like that and then coming back, and you're out in the saddle all day. I found the last 5 miles pretty painful, but we got round it, had a beer and whatever, and sort of celebrated. But yeah, that's cycling and surfing are definitely my thing.
Well, we once did a long bike ride. We have Port Lympne Wild Animal Park up the road, and they used to do something called the Rhino Ride, and I think it was 70 miles or something. And a good many years ago, before we had little Dodsy, Simon and I went to do it with a couple of our friends, and we set off, and within probably 8 miles, my friend went to grab the water, like they have them at the marathon where they like hold them out and you have to cycle by and grab them as you go along. She grabbed it. She was in front of me. She grabbed it. She wobbled, and I thought, oh no, it's all going horribly wrong. And sure enough, it did. She fell off, and she made this massive gouge in her arm to the point where we could almost see the bone. And she doesn't really blood, especially not hers. So we spent a little while sitting while she recovered herself and started to feel a bit better, during which point our friend actually mended somebody's tyre puncture, so that was good. And then we set off again, and within about another 5 miles, I managed to get my t-shirt tangled in her handlebars, and I went over the front of my bike into the hedge.
Oh goodness.
It's like this guy, I remember he was in a Mini, he'd stopped and he sort of drove past really slowly, and he just poked his head out the window, and he went, could you do that again, please? Because it was really entertaining. I was like, thank you, thanks for your sympathy. And I'd literally missed some barbed wire by, 5 inches or something. And at which point my husband was like, oh my God, we're never going to get around this thing. We've only done like 10 miles and we've had 2 massive accidents already.
I
And
was going to say, it
as you
sounds
say,
pretty attritional, actually. You've got to be, again, determination coming. Did you get round?
I did, but the last 5 miles for me were painful too, but it wasn't anything other than where I'd fallen off my bike. I had a swollen knee by this stage, so every time I turned the pedal, I was like catching stuff inside my knee by that stage. But we did do it. I didn't do it the following year. I left him to do it on his own with his uncles. But yeah, it is a story we oft tell about how we almost didn't do the Rhino ride because it was not going so well. And my friend, who lived to tell the tale, has a massive scar on her arm still. So.
Nice tattoo, like reminder. Gosh, well, good for you for getting round though, because it like when things start going wrong like that, it's quite easy sometimes just go, oh gosh, this is starting to get really attritional. Should we do this? Exactly. I remember going for a ride in November last year, and I'd already had a puncture, and there was about me and 20 guys out with a club, and I ended up we take turns on the front, and I ended up on the front and then got another puncture on my front wheel and went straight down, and about 3 guys rode over the top of me, and I was like, oh, no. In November as it's starting to get cold and all that sort of stuff, and it's like, and I didn't make it out the following week, but I was like determined that I wasn't going to let that ruin my winter riding, because that's where you lose so much fitness.
Yeah. Well, I do keep thinking I perhaps ought to go cycling, because in our sailing club, we have a cycling club attached to it as well. And when the cyclists turn up every Sunday morning for their tea and cakes and things, I always think how their legs are very nice. So cycling must be good for your legs and your bottom.
It is, yeah. I've noticed that my jeans have got tighter since I started cycling, but not the waist. The waist has got looser, but the legs have got tighter. It's really weird.
Anyway, before we get anyone too much aflutter at the other end, talk about how you keep up with what's going on and keep yourself learning and improving within your business.
So I'm a massive fan of Audible, so I listen to audiobooks. So it just it gives me sort of 15 or 20 minutes, on the school run. Once I've dropped the girls off, I can just kind of dial into an audiobook, and I do an awful lot of reading. But I also listen to, there's a few podcasts which I listen to. So I mentioned the Traffic and Funnels guys. So you'd think Traffic and Funnels would be sort of all about marketing stuff, and there is a bit of marketing there, but actually the nice thing about TNF, and you've got to get over, the guys sound like they I don't know, they sound like teenagers, like talking about business, but actually when you start to see beyond that and listen to what they're actually saying, they've got some really insightful stuff from a mindset perspective. And actually, like, marketing and running a business in this day and age, it can be pretty tough. And actually, it's mostly mindset that you need to be focusing on, actually, I think, from a business perspective. So the TNF guys are amazing. Like, book wise, I'm a massive fan of, I love sort of parables. I love stories. So I'm a big fan of books like Built to Sell by John Warrillow. What else is there? There's another great book called Go for No as well, which it talks about kind of, rather than going for yeses with sales, like, go out and get as many no's, because, if you get a yes, like with your first call of the day, and stop, like, you're actually losing opportunities. So they say, like, ignore the yeses, but just go out and get as many no's as you possibly can, because it increases your chances. So, and it's told in like a really nice sort of story format. But yeah, reading and listening to audiobooks and podcasts tends to be how I kind of learn.
I think we might be twins. And so just a last practical question as well. Any tools or apps you recommend? We've talked about Todoist earlier on. Anything else?
Todoist is kind of the main one, but from a productivity perspective, because I bet everybody listening has got a ton of different softwares which they're using. So, whether it be sort of MailChimp, GetResponse, all the different CRMs that are out there, and Sitely, they'll be using Office 365 or Gmail for their mail, and various different things. So I'm a massive fan of an app called Zapier. So Zapier is designed so that it's like what we call a micro-tasking tool. So if I add somebody into Xero, my bookkeeping package, then also pop their details into my client list in my CRM, so that you're not having to do repetitive tasks. I had two amazing guys on my podcast actually recently called The Lazy Entrepreneurs, and their whole thing is about this whole cancer of 2-minute tasks that we seem to spend our days doing. And basically Zapier is the answer. It's kind of like anything that we find ourselves doing repetitively, there's probably a Zap out there that you can do for it. So I do it I use like Acuity to book people in. And then when somebody kind of books their slot to speak to me through Acuity, it fires out a link to a type form, like just an application form, which they've then got to fill out. So it does that piece of it automatically. The details are squirted into my CRM, so I know what stage of the pipeline, the process they're up to, and then that reminds me that like that automatically sets me like 7 tasks to do in terms of the follow-up and send them a gift and a few other bits and pieces. And so I try and automate as much as I possibly can, and most of that is done through Zapier.
Yeah, me too. I was spending yesterday afternoon creating a load of new Zaps for my new membership site sign up process. So I'm in there too. Though it's funny, actually, on my podcast recently, somebody who was like one of these people who markets for people to come on podcasts. So they'd booked somebody into the podcast and then sent me a message back saying, do I have to still fill out that form? I've sent you the speaker sheet. And it's like, well, that form is what drives everything through my process, sends it to my show notes people and everything else. So given you've booked them in, yes, please, because it's like I could do it so that you're in the process, but it's not even my job because you want them on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it.
I said, but I did say, well, it does, add into a lot of the processing. So it'd be really helpful if you could do it. Thank you very much.
That's exactly it. It's all about, you just got to, like, life's far too short. We don't want to be doing all these mundane like admin tasks like over and over and over. Like, it'd be so droll. Like, why would you want to run a business like that? Let's just automate it and get a sense of satisfaction when the emails pop up and say, oh, you've just signed a new client. Oh, amazing.
Exactly. When we're lying on that beach. So what about those days when it all goes horribly wrong? How do you deal with that?
I mean, I would ask you to define horribly wrong, but we probably don't want to subject people to, like, disaster stories. But in terms of, I think sometimes just it's a clue. Like, if things are going horribly wrong, it's a clue. And more often than not, sometimes just taking a couple of hours out or taking the day off is the best answer. Like, not ignoring the problem, but I don't know about you, but like, again, I don't want to get your listeners into a bit of a flutter, but I have my best ideas in the shower, which is the most annoying time to have ideas, because like, you're soaking wet, soap in your eyes. You normally don't have a notepad or pen or your phone nearby, or the phone, you do have the phone, but it doesn't work because your fingers are wet. So you can't you can't get these ideas down. But my point is, it's like, when you stop thinking about this stuff, that's normally when the solution comes. So the best thing you can possibly do is just switch off switch off your technology, walk out the office, go for a nice walk in the countryside or a surf or whatever it is that you do, and not something too energetic, because that will distract you, but just something quiet, and that will solve all of your problems.
Yes, mine's less fluttering for the listeners. Mine's in the car, so I don't drive often because I'm working from home. But when I have my long journeys, I come up with so much stuff that I keep thinking I must schedule some more journeys in, which thankfully little Doddsy has done for me with her netball.
Just thinking, maybe I need to have more showers. Maybe that that's my green leadership activities right there, just going and having 3 showers a day.
Exactly. Perfect. So what about those days where you've got to live more? So that's the bit where you get to do more of the things you want to do and less of the things that you feel you should do or you have to do. What does that day look like for you?
That normally involves like either the sea or cycling, and with both of those, if I can involve my family as well within that, then obviously I will. But for, family aside, for me personally, like, I'm at my best doing like a 4 or 8 hour surf session, like just bobbing around in the sea, not even catching waves, just being totally away from tech, and everything's a long way off. Like, when you're a quarter of a mile out to sea, like, everything is a long way away, so you don't have to focus on anything. It's just really pleasant.
Lovely. And just before I get you to tell people how they can get in contact with you, one of the things we talked about before we started is about what you're doing in terms of giving back. And I'd like you to share with the audience what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a firm believer of kind of like creating vehicles where you can give back. I'm going to caveat this because a lot of people want to give back the moment they set up a business, but quite frankly, like, if you set up a business and you're earning 10 grand a year, like, versus if you're earning 100 grand a year, you can give back a darn sight more if you're at 100k. So sometimes actually putting off giving back is a good thing. And actually, I did that, and I actually have a couple of vehicles now for sort of giving back. So the first one is I run a local networking group, and we do goodie bags in those at each of the meetings, and anybody who wants to put stuff in the goodie bags pays a bit into a charity. And in 3 years, we've managed to raise close to 5k for a local children's charity, which is like, I was blown away when we actually totted it all up. It's incredibly generous, and we typically get sort of 40 to 50 people at each one of those events. And then more recently, I've got my coaching program to a point now whereby I always wanted to have some like micro giving going on, and being able to, because I do a lot of things around sort of with books, for example, offsetting some of that making my business carbon neutral, or at least environmentally neutral, like make sure that I'm kind of improving the world, not just kind of taking from it. So I've recently, when we enroll a new client, we actually make a donation to 4Ocean, which is a really cool project. It's set up by two surfing guys about basically they pay fishermen out in Indonesia and various places around the world now to fish plastic out of the ocean, and then their families then turn those to use that plastic and turn it into these really cool bracelets. And obviously, so it's helping the economy, it's helping the environment, and again, just giving a little bit back. And that's just my little way of kind of offsetting it, as we enroll a new client and we use more resources, giving a little bit back to the world, basically.
Lovely. I love those two examples. And you just reminded me, it's something I was planning to do with my membership site, and I haven't put that into place yet. So I am going to go and do that forthwith.
Well, I've chosen 4Ocean. It's a really it's a way of making these micro impacts around the world. But I was kind of weighing up between 4Ocean, and then there's also another one called Buy One Give One. And eventually, when my program makes its next leap, I'll be bringing Buy One Give One in as well. So we'll actually be improving two charities, or donating to two charities once that happens. Buy One Give One's brilliant in terms of simple things like I should do this. I should do it now. So it's simple things like there are young teenage girls in third world and developing countries where they get to a certain age, and if their families can't afford school uniforms, and they're basically just sold off, like married off, and off they go and have kids, because if they don't have a school uniform, they can't go to school. And I just think it's absolutely shocking that things like that happen in this world still. And so what you can do through Buy One Give One and another charity separately called Nalu is you can you buy merchandise or clothes, or you can just make a donation, and they go out and buy school uniforms for teenage girls, which I just think it's just amazing when you know that there's that sort of stuff happening on a personal level for people.
Yeah, definitely. I support an organisation called Acts 435, and they are an organisation where you donate, and that money goes directly to individuals that have specific issues, and they run the charity through gift aid, so they don't actually take any of the money you donate to run the business. They just give everything direct, and you choose who you want to give the money to. So the website tells you, you just reminded me of it because of school uniform. Often in August I donate because there's children who are children of women who've left their partners because of violence and that sort of thing, and they've ended up in a new school area. They need new school uniform and they've got no money for it, so you literally can just donate like 30 quid and that's them kitted out for school, sort of thing. Obviously not all school uniforms are quite that cheap, but and so it's really, really individual, and it goes directly to those people that need the help. So and I just love the fact they run it through gift aid rather than actually taking any of the money that they raise to fund.
I think that's great. I mean, that's exactly what and business should be about, not just taking. It shouldn't just be about going out and selling your stuff and making money. If you can find a way to kind of build giving into your business, I said, those impacts are going to increase. Like, don't give everything away to start off with, because it's going to slow down the growth in your business that will create those opportunities in a year or two's time. But I think all business owners should be looking for ways to kind of give back alongside helping themselves.
Yeah, I saw a reference recently, and it won't be much use because I can't actually remember what it was called, but I'm sure there's a website where somebody's gone into business, being able to connect businesses with donating. So if you decide you're going to do something like that, there's a way of easily just doing it automatically without even having to, set it up yourself or think about it at the time. But as I say, useless reference because I can't actually remember what it was called, but I read about it recently. But, great that people are thinking about, how can people connect people who want to help from a business perspective.
Absolutely.
So tell us how people can get in contact with you and how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, of course. So we've got a couple of websites. So I've got robinwaite.com, which has kind of got details about if you want to book me for sort of speaking and things like that. So it's my more personal site. But we've got some free resources on the fearless.biz website. So I mentioned one of my books, Take Your Shot, earlier on. So if anybody's based in the UK, I'm more than happy to ship out paperback copies of that. So if you go onto the resources tab on fearless.biz, you'll be able to go and apply for a copy of Take Your Shot. And it just basically is just a really simple story which goes through 5 kind of core business principles. It's about a 2-hour read, and I tell it like a story about this guy called Russ, who is a golf pro. And then, you can just basically Google Robin Waite, and that's with an E on the end of it. And you'll find all of my different social media platforms and YouTube channel and anything that I've put out there. That thankfully there's not many other Robin Waites out there doing what I do, so you'll find me.
Lovely. In fact, we had that discussion at the end of your podcast about not many other Joe Dodds out there, and I Googled myself afterwards, and that person in politics is still on that front page alongside me. I've got to do something about more content.
Make it your thing to knock the other Joe Dodds off.
Exactly. Although it's interesting, I looked on images after I did the Google and went way down the images and found some sort of convict type person. So
oh no, there's a Joe Dodds murderer out there.
Exactly. Anyway, thank you so much for joining on here, Robin. I started to read your book. I'm in the middle of another book at the moment, so I haven't got too far into it, but I do sort of endorse that it's a very easy read in terms of all the energy that came through on the podcast today. I felt from the beginning part of the book, so I'm sure as I get through the rest of it, it'll be like you on paper.
Amazing. And don't forget to leave a review, Joe, of course.
No, of course I will.
Help other people find it.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining me today. I've really, really enjoyed it.
That's a real pleasure, Joe. Thank you for having me on.
All this information is available in the show notes. If you go to powertolivemore.com / in this case 135, you'll find them there. And today I just want to quickly talk about the concept of overwhelm. I did a webinar earlier last week about how to recognise and heal from business burnout. And one of the people at the webinar asked a question at the end about how do you deal with overwhelm, where you just have so much stuff to do. And I thought, leading into Christmas, it is actually quite an overwhelming time, isn't it? I've got so much going on. I don't know whether I'm coming or going half the time at the moment. And it reminded me that I do have these moments of overwhelm, the same as anybody. And I just thought it'd be useful to share how I deal with them. Firstly, it's about being aware of not packing too much in, which is obviously a bit sort of shutting the door after the horse has bolted, as it were. So remember for next time to think more carefully about the things that you want to do and the things that you don't want to do, and making sure that you schedule accordingly. And then secondly, I think we sometimes get overwhelmed because we have a list of things that we need to get done, and it gets longer and longer. And sometimes when we're busy doing a number of other things, which are maybe sort of one-offs that we don't normally do in our routine, then our routines go out of the window. So, for example, email builds up because you just don't have the time to deal with it like you would on a normal day. So I often end up in a situation where my email's gone a bit mad, my to-do list is looking ridiculous. So what I do is I look at my to-do list and I just think about what the next sort of key time is. So it might be that I'm looking on an afternoon and I think, what do I have to get done? Absolutely have to get done by tomorrow morning, and everything else can just go to one side. Or it might be in the morning, what have I got to do today? And again, everything else goes to one side. So I'm recording this on Sunday. I would have put this out normally on Friday. I've had a big event on Friday in London. We went to France yesterday to visit some friends. I've got a netball match this morning, and then we've got 2 concerts this afternoon and evening. So really hectic few days. So I thought, right, I'll just quickly get this done. What else have I got to do before tomorrow that absolutely must get done? I need to do a newsletter for Engage with Success, which talks about the event that I did on Friday, because those go out first thing on a Monday. I needed to get this done because I want to get this out obviously today, Sunday, and I need to just have a quick look through my emails, make sure I've not got anything that I need to know about before Monday, and I need to cook some lunch for tomorrow because I'm going to see a friend and I offered to take lunch. I need to get that done. Other than that, I don't need to do anything else, even though there's a ton of stuff on my
list I've gone through, I know that there's nothing else that's that urgent that needs to be done before tomorrow. So I'm going to do the things that I need to get done and then just ignore the rest. And then tomorrow I'll do the same. And it may be that I can resolve it all tomorrow. Sometimes you do that and you look and you knock off a few things off your to-do list and you realise that actually, although it looked really long, they were things that were quite quick to do, and once they're out of the way it's looking, so much better. But if that isn't the case tomorrow, I'll do the same thing. What do I absolutely have to get done tomorrow, and what can go by the wayside? And probably by middle of the week I'll be back on track again. And so it's about then thinking, I've got it, I'm on it, I know what needs to be done and what doesn't have to be done at the moment, and therefore I'm not going to worry about all those other things that I know are sitting there to be done but aren't urgent for today or tomorrow. Hopefully that helps you to think about how you can be a bit calmer and less prone to burnout during this festive season. If you're interested in watching the whole webinar about how to recognise and heal from business burnout, then if you're listening to this in the next few days, then you should still be able to get access to that by going to powertolivemore.com/webinar. If when you get there you find that it's an advert for a future webinar or a different one, then obviously you're listening to this further down the line. Basically, I do a monthly webinar and it's live so that you can access it for about 10 days following the live webinar, and then I take it into the membership site and get ready for the next one. So if it's something you particularly are interested in watching, you might want to find out more about the membership site so you can see it there if it's not still available. So it's powertolivemore.com/webinar. If you want to find out more about the membership site, it's powertolivemore.com/get-calm. And don't forget the show notes are available at powertolivemore.com/135, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.